Have you ever had one of those, brilliant ideas, a passion project you really pour your heart into, only for it to just sort of slowly, painfully fizzle out?
Oh, definitely. Or maybe you've seen companies, big ones sometimes, invest a ton of money in a new product.
Yeah, huge fanfare at the launch.
Exactly. And then crickets. It just lands with a thud.
And you're left scratching your head thinking, why does this keep happening? It feels like it happens again and again.
It's an incredibly common story, unfortunately. And it often points to something pretty fundamental, a flaw in how we generally approach innovation.
A flaw how?
Well, we tend to funnel so much effort, so many resources into these ideas that too often haven't really been tested. Not in the real world, anyway.
That hits the nail on the head. And that's really our mission today. We're going to do a deep dive into The Lean Startup by Ries. You sent over some absolutely fascinating excerpts from this book. It's really influential. It includes insights from Ries's own journey with his company, IMVU.
Yeah, the IMVU story is quite something. But, this isn't just for software developers or, the typical tech gurus.
Right.
The mindset, the principles we're going to explore, they can fundamentally transform how anyone approaches building something new. Anything new, really.
So it's applicable more broadly.
Absolutely. It helps you avoid those really costly mistakes and helps unlock genuine, sustainable growth, even inside big organizations.
It sounds like it's all about being maybe well-informed, but quickly. And you mentioned some surprising facts along the way.
That's a good way to put it. Fast learning is key. And yeah, some of the origins and applications might surprise you.
Okay. But to really get why this approach is different, maybe we should first touch on what usually goes wrong. What does that traditional approach to building something new look like? Where does it fall short?
Well, historically, you kind of see two main pitfalls, common ones.
Okay.
One is the super detailed long-term business plan, meticulously crafted.
Ah, yes. The binder full of projections.
Exactly. But it often gets built on this mountain of unproven assumptions, just guesses, really. And that leads to incredibly slow development cycles.
So you spend ages building.
Yeah, you end up perfecting a product for years, maybe, only to find out that, well, nobody actually wants it.
So that's the classic build it and they will come trap, which, yeah, often leads to silence. What's the other side of that coin?
The other extreme is what Ries kind of calls the just do it school of startups.
Just winging it.
Pretty much. It's chaotic. The thinking goes, well, innovation is disruptive and chaotic, so our process should be too.
Right. Sounds logical, maybe.
But unfortunately, it just leads to massive waste. Think like throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks.
Okay.
But you're using millions of dollars in people's time and energy as the spaghetti. Not very efficient.
So whether you overplan meticulously or you just jump in chaotically, the common outcome seems to be, well, waste. Wasted effort, wasted money, failed products.
Yeah.
It's actually quite depressing when you think about it.
It really is. All that human passion and vision, gone.
So what's fundamentally different about the Lean Startup's mindset? How does it break this cycle?
Right. So that's where Lean Startup offers a really different answer. Ries presents it as this new approach. It's about entrepreneurship, yes, but also management.
Okay.
And it's characterized by, he says, extremely fast cycle times, a focus on what customers want without asking them, and critically, a scientific approach to making decisions.
Hold on, without asking them. That sounds backwards. How do you figure out what customers want if you don't, ask?
It does sound counterintuitive, right? But the core idea, the thinking behind it, is that customers often can't really articulate what they truly need, or maybe what they say they want doesn't actually match how they behave.
Ah, okay. Actions speak louder than words.
Exactly. So instead of just relying on surveys or focus groups, Lean Startup pushes you to observe their actions. You use prototypes, you run experiments, you collect data on what they actually do.
Not just what they say they'll do.
Precisely. That behavioral data is way more reliable. And that actually ties into its somewhat surprising origin.
Okay, focusing on actions, that makes sense. So where did these ideas actually come from? It wasn't just dreamed up for software, was it?
No, not at all. The roots of Lean Startup are actually in lean manufacturing, specifically the Toyota production system.
Toyota, like car manufacturing.
Exactly. That system totally revolutionized how physical goods were made by focusing relentlessly on minimizing waste and maximizing value. Ries himself, he experienced repeated product failures, even using the latest agile software methods at the time. So he started looking outside software, he studied manufacturing, and he realized, hey, these core principles, waste reduction, fast cycles, customer value, they could be directly applied to software, and really any new product development.
Wow.
It challenged that old idea that innovation is just inherently unmanageable chaos.
It's incredible, isn't it, how principles from building cars can cross over so effectively to something that seems so different, like building an app or a new service. So for us listening, what's the real bottom line here? Why does this whole approach matter?
Well, I think this deep dive will help you understand how to build things. Companies, products, even just features that actually connect with real users. It doesn't matter what field you're in.
It's about not wasting that initial spark.
Yeah, it's about preserving that precious passion and energy, making sure it's pointed in a direction where it can actually create value, not just evaporate.
Okay, so let's get practical. How does this lean startup actually work? The book lays out 5 core principles, right, that kind of inform the whole thing.
That's right. These 5 principles are really the foundation. Everything else builds on them.
Okay, let's unpack them one by one. Principle number 1 is entrepreneurs are everywhere. What's the gist of that?
It really pushes back against that old image, the lone genius tinkering in their garage.
Right, the Silicon Valley myth.
Kind of. Ries defines an entrepreneur much more broadly. He says it's anyone working within a human institution designed to create new products and services under conditions of extreme uncertainty.
Okay, extreme uncertainty is key there. So it's not just the founder of a brand new company.
Nope. It means lean startup applies to individuals, sure, but also small startups and big corporations, even government agencies. Basically, anyone trying to build something new when the outcome isn't guaranteed.
In any sector. You mentioned Ries even talked about this with the CIO of the U.S. Army.
Yeah, he did. And he noted the CIO was extremely open to new ideas, even in a huge established institution like the Army.
That really drives home how universal it could be. It suggests these principles probably apply to whatever you, the listener, are working on.
Exactly. That broad applicability is really important.
Okay, principle number 2. Entrepreneurship is management. That sounds a bit formal for a startup.
Well, it's a specific kind of management. The idea is that a startup isn't just about the product or the cool features. It's an institution, even if it's small.
An institution.
Okay. And like any institution trying to navigate, that extreme uncertainty, it needs a new kind of management, one that's geared specifically towards rapid learning and figuring out future growth when you don't have all the answers yet.
So it's about creating a system for innovation, not just hoping for random breakthroughs.
Precisely. It's managing the process of innovation under uncertainty.
That feels like a really fundamental shift in how you'd think about starting something. Okay, moving on to principle 3, validated learning.
This one's crucial, really core. Startups don't just exist to make stuff or even just to make money, though obviously those are goals down the line.
Right.
Their primary purpose, according to Ries, is to learn, specifically to learn how to build a sustainable business.
But not just any learning.
No, that's the key. It has to be validated scientifically. That means running frequent experiments, rigorously testing your vision, proving or disproving your core assumptions with actual data from real customers.
So it's not just learning by doing, it's validated learning. That feels like the breakthrough, recognizing that the main job isn't just building, but learning what to build, and that learning needs proof. Like science.
Exactly. It cuts through wishful thinking and assumptions like a scalpel.
Okay, and that leads us right into principle number 4, build, measure, learn. This sounds like the practical application of validated learning, the core loop.
It absolutely is. This is the fundamental activity, the engine of a lean startup. You turn your ideas into products, often very basic versions at first.
MVP.
The minimum viable product, yeah. Then you measure how customers actually respond to that product, real behavior.
Okay.
And then, based on that data, you learn. You figure out whether to pivot, which means make a significant change in direction, or persevere and keep going on the current path.
And the goal is to get through that loop fast.
As fast as possible. Successful startups accelerate this loop to maximize learning before they run out of resources.
Makes sense. Okay. And finally, principle number 5, innovation accounting.
Right. So traditional business accounting, focusing only on things like revenue targets or profit margins, it just doesn't work well for startups.
Why not?
Because they're operating under that extreme uncertainty. Early on, revenue might be 0, but you could still be making huge progress in learning, so a new system is needed.
A different way to measure progress.
Exactly. A system to measure learning progress, set relevant milestones, learning milestones, not just feature milestones, and prioritize work effectively. It provides that scientific approach to making decisions about those crucial pivot or persevere moments.
So it's about having the right kind of dashboard, the right metrics, to truly understand if you're actually making progress towards a sustainable business or just, spinning your wheels with vanity metrics.
You nailed it. This isn't just about using different numbers. It's a fundamental shift in how you make those critical survival decisions. You move from gut feelings or traditional finance models to data-driven strategic choices.
Okay, this framework is starting to make a lot of sense. But to really bring it home, let's dive into that IMVU story, Eric Ries' own experience. This is where he really learned these lessons the hard way, right?
Indeed. It started back in 2004. Ries and his team had this really ambitious vision for IMVU. They wanted to, and I quote, change the way people communicate.
Wow, big goal.
Huge. The dream was for people to connect with their friends online using these cool avatars. It was meant to combine intimate connection and safe anonymity.
Interesting combo.
Yeah, and they plan to build everything, all the clothing, furniture, and accessories for these avatars, a whole virtual world.
That sounds like an enormous undertaking from scratch. So what happened when they actually tried to build and launch this grand vision?
Well, the short version. The product failed repeatedly in the marketplace.
Ouch.
Yeah. Ries talks very openly about feeling that immense pressure of repeated product failure and the profound waste money, time, effort spent marketing something nobody actually wanted.
So what did he realize was the root cause? Was the tech bad?
Not fundamentally. He realized the problem wasn't that the product was disruptive, innovative, or chaotic. The problem was actually a management failure, a failure in how they were approaching the startup itself. Their process was flawed.
So this wasn't just a tech problem or a market problem initially. It was a problem with their strategy, their method. How did they try to fix that? What was their first big strategic shift, their first pivot?
Well, instead of trying to build a whole new instant messaging network from the ground up, which was proving impossible,
Like
they shifted strategy. They decided to become an IM add-on product.
an add-on. How would that work?
The idea was clever, actually. Combine the huge user base of traditional IM clients like AIM or MSN Messenger back then with the potentially high revenue per customer you could get from virtual worlds and goods.
Okay, so leverage existing networks.
Exactly. They had this vision that their add-on, which let people use IMVU avatars and virtual goods without having to ditch their current IM provider, would just spread throughout existing IM networks like an epidemic.
Ah, the viral dream. So aiming for explosive growth through existing channels. And when they launched this new add-on version, what was it like? Was it like polished and ready to go viral?
Not quite. Far from it, actually. They made a conscious decision to launch what we now commonly call a minimum viable product, or MVP.
The first version.
Yeah, a really basic, low-quality early prototype. Aries himself candidly calls it terrible.
Terrible. They launched something terrible on purpose.
Oh, the goal wasn't perfection. It was maximum learning with minimum effort. Get something out there to test the core idea. He remembers spending countless hours arguing about which bugs to fix and which features to cut. They were full of hope, but also terrified of shipping a bad product.
I can imagine. So what happened when they finally launched this terrible prototype? Did it spread like wildfire? Did the epidemic start?
Nope, nobody cared.
Woof again.
Again. Reyes said it was truly depressing. Customers weren't even engaged enough to realize how bad or buggy the product was.
So it wasn't that the bugs turned people off.
No, it was worse. Customers simply weren't getting far enough into the experience to even find the bugs. That really highlighted the incredible waste of building something, even a basic version that nobody fundamentally wanted.
Wow. Okay, that is a hard lesson.
Yeah.
And yeah, so many founders hit that wall. So how did they start to turn it around? How did that validated learning principle start to kick in after that really painful experience?
This is where it gets interesting. Their initial assumption, remember, was that people wanted to use IMVU with their existing friends, maybe for privacy or just ease of use.
Right, the add-on idea.
But that turned out to be completely wrong. By actually observing user behavior, who was signing up, what they were doing, they discovered something unexpected.
What was that?
Customers weren't using it much with existing friends. They actually wanted to use the avatars to make new friends. IMVU's features, almost accidentally, were facilitating meeting strangers online in this avatar format.
Whoa. So a completely different use case just sort of emerged. Driven by the customers, not the founder's original plan.
Exactly. A classic example of validated learning revealing the true market need.
So what did this crucial insight lead to? Did they pivot again?
They did. This led IMVU to make another major pivot. They moved away from being a direct-to-consumer IM add-on
Okay.
and pivoted to becoming a friend-matching platform. Eventually, it evolved into more of a sell-side sales platform. They later called this part AVO, where users could actually create and sell virtual goods to each other.
So user-generated content in commerce.
Precisely. It was a really significant turnout pivot, changing the whole platform concept and, critically, their engine of growth.
This pivot stuff is fascinating, but it also connects back to something you mentioned earlier, the danger of vanity metrics. How did IMVU grapple with that?
Oh, big time. In its early days, before these pivots really took hold, IMVU was actually touting some impressive-sounding numbers. Things like hundreds of millions of consumers actively participating worldwide, or 700,000-plus gamers in its first launch.
Sounds great on a slide deck.
Absolutely. But their actual revenue was close to zero.
Ouch. That's the definition of vanity metrics, right?
Yeah.
Big numbers, no substance.
Exactly. Ries talks about how surprisingly easy it was to raise investment money based on these misleading figures. Because, traditional investors often look at top-line user numbers and don't always dig deep enough into the engagement or the monetization.
Right.
The actual metrics that mattered, like the conversion rates for paying customers or retention, were actually dismal back then.
That is such a huge trap. It's so easy to focus on website hits or downloads when the real goal is, paying customers or active users, that illusion of progress.
Yeah.
So, reflecting on all this, what was Ries's biggest personal takeaway or maybe regret from that really tough early period?
He mentions this thought that really kept him up at nights. It was essentially, did we have to build anything at all? Meaning, his biggest regret was not testing their absolute core assumptions before writing a single line of code for the initial product or even the first pivot.
Like, could they have tested the IM add-on idea without building the add-on?
Exactly. He realized they probably could have run really small, cheap experiments first, maybe just a landing page describing the concept, see if anyone even signed up for a waiting list. Anything to test if customers were even vaguely interested in the core premise, rather than spending months building something, even an MVP, that most customers, it turned out, didn't want for its intended purpose.
That's powerful. So how did they start actually doing that, running those small experiments? What did that look like in practice at IMVU?
They started doing a lot of split testing or A/B testing, particularly on their website sign-up flow.
Okay.
For example, they'd test different ways of describing the product. One version might say avatar chat, which implies meeting new people. Another might say I am add-on messaging, focusing on the existing friends angle.
And what did they find?
The results were really clear. The avatar chat version didn't just get more signups overall. Crucially, those users turned into more long-term paying customers.
Uh-huh. Direct link to the money.
Exactly. That was a huge aha moment. It was actionable, validated learning coming directly from customer behavior, pointing them towards the making new friends direction.
And what's the upshot? What's IMVU's legacy now? Did all this painful learning and pivoting actually lead to success in the end?
It absolutely did. As Ries notes in the book, even 10 years later from that context, IMVU was still going strong. It had like 60 million plus avatars created.
Oh, wow, that's significant.
Yeah. Its success really demonstrates the power of accelerating that build, measure, learn loop, constantly learning about your customers, your market, your strategy, and having the courage to actually act on those learnings, even if it means throwing out your original idea.
That is an incredible turnaround story, really born out of facing failure head on and learning from it. So let's just formalize this idea of a pivot a bit more.
Yeah.
In the lean startup world, what exactly is a pivot? It's not just changing your mind, right?
No, it's more structured than that. Ries defines it very specifically. A pivot isn't just random change. It's a structured course correction.
Structured. Okay.
It's a deliberate shift to a new strategic hypothesis, and crucially, it's based on validated learning from your build, measure, learn loop. It's about being agile, yes, but agile with purpose and data behind it.
Got it. So the IMVU story involved what you earlier called a platform pivot. Can you just briefly mention a couple of other types, just to show the range of how these strategic shifts can happen?
Sure. There are quite a few types Ries outlines. For instance, there's the zoom-in pivot. That's where a single feature of your product actually becomes the entire product, because it turns out that's what users value most.
Okay, focusing in.
Right. And the opposite is the zoom-out pivot, where your whole initial product becomes just one feature of a much larger platform or suite.
Expanding out.
Exactly. Then there's the customer segment pivot. You realize the people you thought were your customers aren't the right fit, so you pivot to target a completely different audience who actually needs your solution.
Makes sense.
And another key one is the engine of growth pivot, where you fundamentally change how your business plans to grow.
Right, you mentioned engines of growth before. How do those tie into pivots and the overall strategy?
They're critical. Rizzodes identifies three main engines that power sustainable growth. There's the viral engine.
Where users bring in other users.
Yeah, like social media or anything with strong network effects. Then there's the sticky engine.
Keeping users coming back.
Exactly. High retention is key. Think subscription services or essential tools people use daily. And finally, the paid engine.
Advertising, sales teams.
Right, where the cost to acquire a customer is less than the lifetime value you get from them. Understanding which engine your product truly relies on or should rely on and measuring if it's actually working is vital. Often, a pivot involves switching or refocusing your engine of growth when the current one isn't delivering sustainable results.
Okay, so we've really dug into the IMVU journey, seen how validated learning, pivots, understanding vanity metrics versus real metrics, and focusing on the right engine of growth turn things around. It's a powerful framework. But a point Reese keeps making, and you mentioned it too, is that this isn't just for tech startups and garages.
Not at all. That's one of the biggest misconceptions, maybe. It's incredibly broad. Ries really emphasizes these principles. They're not limited to high-tech software. He explicitly says they apply to manufacturing, biotech, restaurants, even government.
The Army example again?
Exactly. He recounts explaining these ideas to the CIO of the U.S. Army, who was, as he put it, extremely open to new ideas. That really shows the potential reach across any sector facing uncertainty when trying something new.
So it's really important to understand it's not just a collection of tactics like launch a crappy prototype, then pivot. It's deeper than that.
Absolutely. That's a crucial distinction. The lean startup isn't a grab bag of tricks. It's a principled approach to new product development, a mindset. The underlying goal is always the same, regardless of context. Reduce wasted time, wasted money, wasted effort, accelerate learning, figure out what works faster, and build capital-efficient companies or initiatives. You don't have to launch a terrible prototype like IMVU did. The core principle is just test your riskiest assumptions as quickly and cheaply as possible.
So when you strip it all back, what's truly exciting about this whole approach?
Yeah.
What's the real payoff for adopting this mindset?
Well, for Ries, and I think for many people who adopt this, it's not just the process itself, the loops and metrics. It's seeing startups succeed and change the world.
The outcome.
Yeah, that passion, that energy, that vision people pour into new ventures, it's incredibly valuable. It's a precious resource. And this approach helps ensure that resource isn't just squandered on ideas that were never going to work. It channels it towards actual innovation and creating real value.
That's a great way to frame it. We've really covered a lot of ground today, unpacking the lean startup. We dove into those core principles, from entrepreneurs are everywhere right through to innovation accounting.
And we walked through the IMVU story, the initial vision, the failures, the crucial role of validated learning, the constant experimentation, and that willingness to pivot, which ultimately turned uncertainty into a really successful business.
Yeah, that willingness is key. And we've seen how these ideas aren't confined to one industry. They apply universally: tech, manufacturing, services, even government. The core message seems to be relentlessly test your assumptions.
Learn from your actions, not just your plans.
And adapt your strategy based on real-world feedback, not just what you initially hoped would happen.
Exactly. Don't fall in love with your first idea. Fall in love with solving the customer's problem and be willing to change how you do it.
Okay, so a final thought for you, our listener, to maybe chew on. As you go about your work, your projects, whatever you're building or creating, think about it. Are you making assumptions that really need some rigorous testing?
How could you apply that build, measure, learn loop, even in a small way, in your own context? Could it help you reduce waste, speed up your learning?
And maybe the big question, what would it really look like to pivot in your own work or maybe even your personal life when a core assumption you've been operating under turns out to be false? Something to think about.